some of you, welcome again. I've just been on the previous webinar. Those of you that haven't, we were just covering our audit logging system. If you missed that, you want to see it, I think if you go to our contact us using the email at the end of this session, you'll be able to get to a recording of it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the Contractor Manager for FIM, or MIM. I should say MIM really, or FIM, I suppose. Works with either. My name's Hugh Simpson-Wells. I'm CEO of Oxford Computer Group. So I think I'll just launch straight into this. So what are we talking about here? Let's look at a typical situation with FIM and MIM. Very typical to have automated join and move a lever synchronization based on an authoritative HR system. So the majority of our data and our objects, almost certainly, but majority of our attributes as well, coming from HR are going to have an effect in other systems as we synchronize that data. As new people arrive in the HR system, they're imported into the synchronization engine, and that, according to the business rules that we've configured, will create users in other systems depending on the circumstances. That synchronization is omnidirectional in the sense that there may be attributes that you want to flow back, such as an email address, but fundamentally the way around I've drawn the arrows are we're taking data from HR and pumping it into those other systems. That's all fine and good, but how do we handle temporary staff like contractors? Because our HR system is very often not well geared to do that. HR systems are good for handling full-time employees. We may have a lot of temporary staff and not want to clog up our HR system with those. So let's have a look. Here is a way, and this is not the way I'm going to be talking about today, but I just want to cover it off. If you've got the MIM portal implemented, you can readily manage contractors and temporary staff in that. You can provision all your users to the portal, but you can also add additional users in the portal and do CRUD operations, create, update, delete of temporary users there. It has notification and approval filters features built in so that it's possible to notify an owner or a manager or something when that user is about to expire and perhaps extend their time or whatever. The problem with it is, the reason that that's not always done is that there are additional costs. First of all, you need MIM licensing for all users. That's all users in the synchronization engine, and not merely the users that you're managing in the MIM portal. And there is an additional issue that if you're using SQL Server 2016, that requires SharePoint 2016, and so you end up with licenses required for those if they're self-service users. And of course there may be additional servers and there is the whole additional business of deploying the portal. So it may not make sense unless you've got other needs like self-service, password reset and group management, and it is in fact the case that probably most of our customer base have not implemented the portal. So what's the other way that we could handle these temporary, these contractors and temporary workers? Okay, so we've come up with this simple contractor manager, and this is a standalone program which allows us to update a database with information about temporary staff. And we have an MA, a management agent, another connector in the MIM synchronization engine, which treats it rather like an HR system and acts accordingly on those attributes. Perhaps provisioning people into AD once their start date comes up, and perhaps automatically expiring them in AD when we get to their end date, which you will have configured right at the beginning. Very simple implementation. We've aimed to minimize the deployment costs as long as you stick to a pretty much standard out-of-the-box type of configuration. Typically, we're going to be provisioning and deprovisioning AD, enabling and disabling accounts in AD, and automatically expiring those accounts. Now, at the end of the day, the MIM synchronization engine can do what you like, but everything you add to it adds to the cost of implementation. There's a MIM connector with the Contractor Manager, so that makes that very simple. It's extendable, fully customizable schema, so you decide what attributes you want to keep about contractors or temporary staff. You also decide what style of controls you get on the form for entering and so on. It's extendable, as I say, to cover other applications, directories, and so on. It sits in the same SQL Server instance as MIM, so there are no additional overheads there, and it uses Windows Integrated Security. Now, what I'm going to demo, and the way, by the way, that we have up to now deployed this, is as a Windows form. So it's not, for example, in a web form. Now, the rationale there is that, I think I've actually got this, yes, on the next slide. So this is what a typical form looks like, and usually this is restricted to a small set of users who are quite comfortable using a Windows form versus a web front end, and it means there's no additional configuration, but we are working on a web interface, and that will be available very soon if people are interested in it. As I say, it has a fully customizable schema and controls. What does that mean? It means that the attributes that you see on the form here, you can change. You can have a number of different tabs. You'll see that there's a general tab and a comms tab, account info, and audit tab. You have as many tabs as you like, call them what you like. You can have as many fields as you like on each tab. You can call them what you like, and they, of course, correspond to underlying attributes which are being stored in the database. At the top there, you have a simple search facility so that you can search for people of interest. It's being done on a very simple basis of searching for people whose last name starts with this or first name starts with this, or if you know their actual ID, you can put it in. The contractor ID is automatically generated, but you can generate it according to rules that you specify. It'll generally be a number with some kind of prefix or possibly suffix. So you can control all of those things through such straightforward configuration. So if we were to look at another tab, it might look like this, and you decide what you want on the different tabs. So let's have a look at what it looks like, and I've got a very simple MIM synchronization service implementation here. So on the right here, you can see that we're connected to a number of different systems. We've got Active Directory, we've got an HR system, so it's Active Directory at the top here. We've got an HR system. As it happens, we've got the MIM portal there, but we're not using it in this demo, and we've got our contractor system down here, which of course is a SQL Server table, and so tables, and so we're looking at a simple SQL Server management agent. So all very straightforward to configure if you're familiar with FIM or MIM. The actual interface, as I say, is a very simple interface, and the way that you configure that is really up to you. And we'll have a look under the hood after the later part of the demo. We'll have a look under the hood and see how it's configured. So you'll see that I've got a number of people already in the system here, and I could search for people who start with M. It tells me there's only one actually there. Of course, this is a demo system, so there's not much going on. If here's somebody that I put in earlier. If I look at there, you'll see there are 4 people whose last name contains well, I can't even see what letter I've put there, but anyway, so whose first name contains J, as it happens. So it says there are 4 people, and I can look at those 4 people and so on. So I can find somebody in a very straightforward way. I can edit them, obviously. If I edit them, then I'll get I'll be able to make those changes or cancel those changes, and of course I can start a new person. If I start a new person, this person's going to be Mers and Jane, and we'll have a Jane Doe. This drop-down is purely how it's been configured. It may seem odd that we've got the option for them to be full-time. That's probably not the greatest choice for a demo about a temporary system, but it's something you could do. And the job title could be programmer, and the company they work for could be Programmers Are Us, whatever it is, and they might be in a particular department here or associated with a particular department here. Anything that's got an asterisk, and some of these had asterisks, and the asterisks disappeared as we worked through, because the asterisk simply means it's a required field, and you'll see the tabs also have an asterisk to show that there's one or more required fields there. So if I tab through there, and we'll say that they were born in 1972, for example, I could be lazy, but let's try not to be. Let's change the date to some date or other. I just need to move that up. Okay, so let's go to the next tab. I could put in their phone number, their mobile phone number, and so on. If you want that to say cell rather than mobile, that's a simple configuration thing. Here we've got at least one, an asterisk here to indicate at least one required field. There it is, it's end date. Their status is that they're active. We could use a checkbox to give them an email box or something like that. So the start date we'll say is today, and we will have an end date of perhaps today and a bit, a couple of months ahead, when they will automatically expire. Now let's just think for a moment about how that data is going to be used. This data is going to be imported by the sync engine and used depending exactly on how you configure the sync engine. Configuration here is pretty simple. If their start date is on or before today, and their end date is after today, then they're going to get an account in AD. Pretty straightforward stuff. So this person's going to get an account in AD. What happens when we get to the end date? Very hard to demo this in a this environment, so I won't actually try and do this, but of course as the date moves forward, eventually we're going to reach a point where they're going to be expired. Now we can configure this to send an email to warn an owner, manager, or whatever, that an expiration is about to take place if that's a requirement. Of course that happens, there's facilities in the portal to handle emails nicely. We've built that in, or rather we do build that in when necessary to a management agent, just using a rules extension. I haven't implemented that in this case, so it's just going to expire when it expires. As I say, I won't be showing expiry. I'm going to say that they should have an AD account. I'm not going to put in a login ID. I could do, but I'm going to rely on it just using their generated employee number or contractor number as a nice simple way of doing this. Okay, I'm going to save that, and after a short time we would expect that person to appear. If I go to Active Directory Users and Computers and refresh it a few times, I would eventually expect to see a new person arrive. It may take a few more seconds. There it is. I've now got a 54. If I look at that person, I see that that's Jane Doe. The account number I've just used as the logon name. I've just used their contractor number. I could have used a text to do it. We could even come up with include a naming service if we wanted to, but we've kept this really simple so that we don't have to generate unique names. We just use a numbering system, and really that's anything else to see there. In this way, in this particular case, we've also enabled the account using a well-known password. If you don't like that way of doing it, we can create a disabled account, but this is the same argument you always get with the MIM synchronization service. What do you do with a password when you create somebody? All the options that you might apply generally apply here equally. Let's have a quick look under the hood so that you can see the flexibility that you have. This table here called identity is where the actual data is kept. Nothing fancy to see there at all. I'll focus on these other ones. So let's start down here. Let's look at pages, select the top so many rows. You'll see that we've got general, account info, comms, and audit. So that's how we very simply define what tabs should be there. So that's configurable just within the database. if I show you field translation, that is a series of internal names, in other words, the name of an attribute in our identity table. The label name, the label we'd actually like to see on the form. So these are the words which you were seeing, such as start date, end date, AD account, what have you, contractor ID, title. Those are the words that are being used there. And you'll see that also we've got a choice of control type. So we can indicate that something should be a text box or a date field with a date picker or a checkbox, or we could also have a drop down. I don't know if we've got a drop down here that we could see. Combo box, there you are. So we've got a combo box there called status. And if we look at this one called lookup, you'll see that status is defined here. What goes in the drop-down is defined here in the combo box, and it's active, inactive, or terminate in this particular case. And staff type, I drew attention to that, full-time or part-time. So everything is configurable just here. There are a few additional parameters which it's barely worth me mentioning, and these are to do with how we generate a name, an ID, how we generate the contractor ID. Now this is normally implemented as part of an OCG implementation, and so we will reconfigure this for a given customer, obviously at additional cost. But we've pretty much brought it down to something pretty standard, which which people are happy to take, and we don't at the moment sell this as standalone, but I think if we saw enough interest, we might consider that, but at the moment we consider this to be part of an OCG implementation. I'll preempt any question about the cost of this by saying that it's a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, because usually we're more interested in the time time spent implementing it, which is not great, than the cost of a product, because we don't see it as a product, we see it as part of implementation. So the cost is modest, but it's a bit how long is a piece of string. So really that's all I've got to show you. Let me just see if we've got any questions. I want to put up a quick poll while you're thinking of any questions that you might have, really just to find out who would like to have a further demonstration, perhaps one that is having trouble putting that up. Here we go. So who would like a personalized demonstration? In other words, a demonstration where we can talk more about how it would fit into your particular environment rather than this rather generic thing. So we're seeing a number of people voting. Of course, it's very typical that if people aren't interested, they won't vote at all. But yeah, we're seeing most of you voting, and about half of you would like to see a further personalized demo. So that's about all I've got to show you. I'll respond to any questions that come up. And can you join existing contractor accounts? Very good question. Yes, we can. I take that to mean that you may have existing contractor accounts and you want to sync up what's in the Contractor Manager here with the existing ones. Yes, we can do that. It's usually pretty straightforward to do. It does, of course, depend on exactly how you've implemented it, but we can talk to you individually about that offline. I've got a Diego, I can see your question. Could you share the VM OCG app for test purposes? We haven't really thought about how we would do that. I think that's a question I'm going to have to take back and come back to you on. It's not something we'd thought of doing, actually, to be honest. Any other questions, anybody? Okay, so somebody's asked a good question, which is how does it work when a contractor converts to employee and now comes from the HR system? And that's a question really of how we integrate it. Obviously the simplest solution and the sort of out-of-the-box solution is to say, well, the hard way, which is that you effectively deprovision them using the contract system, and you provision them using the HR system. And of course the disadvantage there is that you would lose the SID, you would lose that account, and you know the same kind of argument might apply in other systems too. If it's really important that they switch over, there are ways we can do that, but of course it makes the configuration that much more complicated. I think we would have to talk to you individually about your requirements there. Now, while I'm just going to switch back to PowerPoint, I will respond to any further questions that come up because I just want to summarize that what we've got is basic management of contractors and other temporary staff, automated provisioning and deprovisioning of, for example, AD accounts, fully configurable schema and fully configurable entity form, sorry about that typo, uses Windows integrated security, minimal additional implementation, and deployment overheads. And for further information, there is an email address, probably the best way to contact us. You can find a little bit of additional detail on our website, but I suggest you come back to us for further details. So thank you very much for attending. I got no further questions and I've got nothing further to say, so I won't keep you. I'll let you go back to your day. Thank you very much, and see you perhaps on another of the webinars that we're running this week on extending MIM.